In a world grappling with unprecedented change, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have emerged as a powerful force. Once dubbed emerging economies, they now command a significant share of global GDP and population. The BRICS alliance represents a shift in the global balance of power, challenging the long-standing dominance of the West. These nations, with their diverse economies and political systems, are united by a common goal: to reshape the global order and create a more equitable and multipolar world. The BRICS nations are not merely seeking a seat at the table, they are aiming to redesign it. They are calling for reforms in global governance, demanding a greater voice in international institutions like the United Nations Security Council and the International Monetary Fund. The BRICS nations believe that these institutions, largely shaped by the West after World War II, no longer reflect the realities of the 21st century. This ambition is driven by a shared history of colonialism and a desire to break free from the shackles of Western hegemony. The BRICS nations are determined to chart their own course, forging a new path for developing countries and challenging the existing global order. This essay delves into the recent expansion of BRICS, its implications for the global power dynamics, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The BRICS alliance took a significant step in January 2025, welcoming 6 new members, including Nigeria, into its fold. This expansion, the most substantial since South Africa's inclusion in 2010, signals the growing appeal of the bloc and its vision for a multipolar world. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and largest economy, brings significant weight to the table. Its inclusion underscores the growing influence of Africa on the global stage. Joining Nigeria in this new wave of expansion are Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Argentina. Each of these nations brings unique strengths and perspectives to the bloc, further diversifying its economic and geopolitical clout. This expansion is not merely symbolic. It represents a strategic move by BRICS to consolidate its influence and broaden its global reach. The inclusion of these new members is a testament to the shifting sands of global power. The traditional centers of power in the West are facing increasing competition from these rising nations who are eager to assert their influence on the world stage. The expansion of BRICS is a clear indication that the world is moving towards a more multipolar system, where power is more evenly distributed. At the heart of the BRICS agenda lies a deep-seated desire to reform global governance. This coalition of nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, seeks to reshape the international landscape to better reflect the realities of the 21st century. These nations contend that the current international system, largely dominated by Western powers, is outdated and fails to adequately represent the interests of the developing world. They argue that the existing structures were established in a different era and no longer serve the diverse and dynamic needs of today's global community. They argue for a more inclusive and equitable system that gives a greater voice to emerging economies. This includes not only political representation but also economic influence, ensuring that the voices of billions in the developing world are heard and considered in global decision-making processes. The BRICS nations are particularly vocal about the need for reform in institutions like the United Nations Security Council, where decision-making power remains concentrated in the hands of a few. They believe that a more representative Security Council would lead to more balanced and fair international policies. They advocate for expanding the Security Council to include permanent members from Africa, Latin America, and Asia, reflecting the changing global landscape. This expansion would not only democratize the institution but also bring in perspectives from regions that have historically been underrepresented. Beyond the UN, BRICS is also pushing for reforms in global financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These institutions play a pivotal role in shaping global economic policies, and BRICS believes that their governance structures need to be more inclusive. They argue that these institutions, while playing a crucial role in global economic stability, often impose policies that disproportionately benefit developed nations. This has led to a growing sense of inequality and frustration among developing countries who feel that their needs and challenges are not adequately addressed. BRICS seeks greater voting rights and influence within these institutions to ensure that the concerns of developing countries are addressed. They believe that a more balanced distribution of power would lead to fairer and more effective economic policies that benefit all nations. This push for reform is not an attempt to dismantle the existing global order, but rather to make it more representative and responsive to the needs of a changing world. BRICS envisions a global governance system where cooperation and mutual respect are the cornerstones of international relations. The BRICS nations believe that a more equitable and inclusive global governance system is essential for achieving sustainable development and lasting peace. They argue that only through such a system can the world effectively tackle the complex challenges of our time, from poverty and inequality to climate change and conflict. The quest for a multipolar world challenging Western dominance. The rise of BRICS is intrinsically linked to the broader shift towards a multipolar world. This shift is not just about economic power, but also about political influence and cultural exchange. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are increasingly asserting their presence on the global stage. The post-Cold War era, characterized by unipolarity with the United States as the sole superpower, is gradually giving way to a more complex geopolitical landscape. This new landscape is marked by the rise of regional powers and the re-emergence of old ones, creating a more intricate web of international relations. The BRICS nations, with their growing economic and political clout, are at the forefront of this transformation. Their combined GDP now rivals that of the traditional Western powers, and their influence in international organizations is steadily increasing. This multipolar world, as envisioned by BRICS, is not about replacing one hegemon with another. Instead, it seeks to create a more balanced global order where multiple centers of power coexist and collaborate. Instead, it is about creating a more balanced and equitable international system where power is more diffuse and no single nation or bloc of nations can dictate the global agenda. This vision promotes a system where dialogue and cooperation are paramount. This vision is rooted in the principles of multilateralism, dialogue, and cooperation. The BRICS nations advocate for a world where decisions are made collectively, respecting the sovereignty and interests of all countries involved. The BRICS nations believe that a multipolar world is essential for addressing global challenges that transcend national borders, such as climate change, pandemics, and terrorism. These issues require a coordinated global response, and a multipolar world is better equipped to provide that. They argue that these challenges can only be effectively tackled through collective action and a shared sense of responsibility. By working together, nations can pool their resources and expertise to find sustainable solutions. However, this quest for a multipolar world is not without its challenges. The existing power structures are deeply entrenched, and those who benefit from the status quo are likely to resist change. This resistance can manifest in various forms, from economic sanctions to political pressure. The existing power structures are deeply entrenched, and those who benefit from the status quo are likely to resist change. Overcoming this resistance will require strategic alliances, diplomatic finesse, and a commitment to long-term goals. The BRICS nations will need to navigate these complexities with pragmatism and strategic foresight to realize their vision of a more balanced and equitable world order. Their success will depend on their ability to remain united and to adapt to the evolving geopolitical landscape. The dollar's reign. Can BRICS offer an alternative? One of the most significant challenges to the existing global order posed by BRICS is its ambition to challenge the dominance of the US dollar. This ambition is not just a fleeting thought, but a well-considered strategy that has been in the making for years. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are all major players in the global economy, and their combined efforts could potentially reshape the financial landscape. The dollar has reigned supreme as the world's reserve currency for decades, giving the United States unparalleled economic and geopolitical leverage. This dominance allows the U.S. to influence global trade, control financial markets, and impose economic sanctions with relative ease. The power of the dollar is so entrenched that it often seems unassailable. The BRICS nations, however, are increasingly looking for ways to reduce their reliance on the dollar and promote the use of their own currencies in international trade and finance. This shift is not merely symbolic. It represents a fundamental change in how these countries engage with the global economy. By using their own currencies, they aim to gain more control over their economic destinies. This move away from the dollar is driven by a number of factors. The global financial crisis of 2008 expose the vulnerabilities of a dollar-centric system, prompting many countries to reconsider their dependence on the U.S. currency. Additionally, the increasing use of economic sanctions by the U.S. has made other nations wary of being too reliant on the dollar. First, the BRICS nations are wary of the vulnerability that comes with relying on a single currency controlled by another country. They understand that their economic stability can be compromised by decisions made in Washington, D.C., over which they have no control. This lack of control is a significant concern for these emerging economies. They have witnessed firsthand how fluctuations in the dollar's value can impact their own economies. For instance, a sudden appreciation of the dollar can make their exports more expensive and less competitive, while a depreciation can lead to inflationary pressures. These fluctuations can create economic instability and uncertainty. Second, they believe that a multipolar world requires a more diversified international monetary system that reflects the growing economic weight of emerging economies. A diversified system would not only be more stable but also more equitable, allowing for a fairer distribution of economic power and influence. To this end, the BRICS nations have taken concrete steps to reduce their dependence on the dollar. They have initiated various bilateral and multilateral agreements to trade in their own currencies. These agreements are designed to facilitate smoother and more efficient trade relations among BRICS countries. They have established the New Development Bank, headquartered in Shanghai, as an alternative to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The New Development Bank aims to provide financial support for infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging economies, thereby reducing their reliance on Western financial institutions. They have also explored the possibility of creating a common currency for BRICS or using a basket of currencies for trade settlement. This idea, while still in its nascent stages, holds the potential to significantly alter the dynamics of international trade and finance. While challenging the dollar's hegemony is a formidable task, the BRICS nations are determined to create a more equitable and multipolar international financial system. Their efforts are not just about economic gains, but also about asserting their sovereignty and reducing external vulnerabilities. The success of their endeavor could have far-reaching implications for the global economy and the balance of power in the 21st century. If BRICS can successfully implement their strategies, it could lead to a more balanced and fair global financial system, benefiting not just the BRICS nations but the world at large. Subscribe to our channel for more updates on global economic shifts and BRICS developments.